last year of his life, my dad talked a little bit about Normandy and World War II and the different stuff he was involved in, the Big Red One, the Army infantry. But when you're in a foxhole with somebody and you're bleeding or scratched up or nicked up, and you're depending on that guy to get out and survive, and he's depending on you, and you're both bleeding the same blood. I think a lot of that, it came from his father, my grandfather, and I think Dad just carried it on. And you know, back then, that generation, everybody hears it, and some young people roll their eyes, but you know, my dad and his two brothers all went over. They signed up before they were drafted. My dad was in the Army, the other two were in the Air Force, bombardier. Uncle Bob still lives, and he's got his bombing logs that are so fascinating he gave me, but nothing they were proud of. They weren't proud of what they had to do in that sense of the violence, but they all came back to my granddad's house within about 2 days of each other. All made it back. And he said they all, his dad, my dad said was very disciplined, but they stayed up all night that night. Think about this, you hadn't seen your sons in 3 years and they're overseas fighting this war to end all wars supposedly, and all of a sudden you got them sitting in front of you, you know. But I'd do anything to be able to sit down and talk to my dad about it some more. But you know, when we opened up his trunk years later, he had a bronze medal in there. He didn't tell anybody about it. You know, it's funny, through the years, guys that he fought with in the war would come by the house just out of the blue. I remember a guy named Page just showed up one day. I guess Dad had saved his life in his mind, and he was real well off. I remember he drove up in a Cadillac. We don't ever see Cadillacs. He brought Dad a color TV had a remote control on it, Gary.
Ooh la la.
Because I was a remote control for years. Go change the channel. There's only 3 channels, you know. Remember, we had a color TV. Nelson Page limped around. One day he told me why he liked my father so much. They were in a few foxholes together.
So you were lucky.
Oh, shoot. You know, but I reach back. There's a lot of guys, people, children in this world and on our team, whatever, sometimes they don't have the privileges I had. You look back at our upbringing, we weren't privileged financially or anything like that, but we were real privileged, you know, from a you know, parent standpoint. They viewed themselves as a team. You know, you couldn't say, you know, they did say, what did your father say? Because they weren't going to contradict that part of it. It was going to be consistent.
Talk about the town where you grew up a little bit.
Century. Oh, it was Mayberry. You know, it well, like 2 policemen, I think. We had a couple service stations, 1 grocery store. It was great, though, you know, because when I first went to New York, they were worried about how I'd get along with everybody. I said, you got to understand, in a small town, you have to get along with everybody. You can't just blow somebody off. You had 1 doctor, 1 appliance store, and you were going to see them at church that Sunday, and you needed to get along with everybody. So it was, I look back at it, I thought I was lucky in a lot of respects that environment. You know, you could walk to school, ride your bike to school. You came home for lunch, went back. You know, your dad was the principal, so you couldn't get away with anything, and everybody knew everybody.
And you were on the panhandle of Florida, right?
Yep.
On the Alabama border.
About 1.5 miles from the Alabama border. Our big rival was right across the state, and you had to hustle for a prom date with 30 or 40 people. I actually went across the state line, but no. No, it was, you know, graduation didn't last very long, but we thought we were lucky. You just played 3 sports. We went from football to basketball to baseball. Obviously no golf or tennis team.
No.
No equestrian team or handball or lacrosse. But you were a male, you're expected to play all 3 sports.